and Happy New Year. This is Rumor, and I thought that in the spirit of starting a new year in 2024, I would do as I did last year at this time and reflect on the year ahead spread that I had done. In that previous video, which I'll link below, I had gone over my 2022 year ahead spread in that video, but then did shuffle and laid out the cards that are now here for 2023. And so likewise in this video, after chatting about this for a bit, looking back on that year, I will lay out a new spread for myself for 2024. Until I get started with that, I hope that you had merry holidays. I hope that the Yule Cat did not devour too many of you, even if you were wearing old clothes. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referencing my last video where I did a little bibliomancy with some Yuletide folklore, and we read about the Yule Cat, and I did a tarot and Lenormand reading accordingly based on that. But anyway, to finally get to this. Okay, so this is all kind of smashed in here because I was too lazy to remove my other decks from the table to make space, to be quite honest. But here we go. So for 2022, my theme card from the Archetype Oracle was the Offering. And I saw and now still see this as being a need that I had to put myself back out there last year and just really discern what it is I have to offer and how I can offer that to others. Because following 2021, losing my dad, I definitely withdrew, became a bit more antisocial, licking my wounds, you could say, well, not kind of. I really lost my spark for life. I lost my spark of creativity. It was just sort of amidst the acute pain, a real numbness. And it was all I could do to just kind of keep it together. It was very much a time that I felt like focused internally, and going into last year then still kind of feeling like I was half living. I just saw this as the call to not forget or overlook what my potential is, what my talents are, what I do have to give others, and to stay in that kind of isolation, especially in a down mood like that. I mean, that's not what was ultimately going to get me through it. I needed to reemerge. And actually, my word for this year is emerge, because I feel like it's been a process to do this that's carrying over into this year. And looking back at this year as a whole, I see it as just that process of gearing up perhaps to do this a bit better, and with this focus in mind. Not that I necessarily achieved it, although I hope that I did in some ways. I hope that someone got something from me over the months, but it was definitely a time of like just trying to get out of that cocoon that I had kind of wrapped myself inside, and therefore why I needed to start the year with strength. I loved when this card came up for me last year because strength is my birth card, 8 being my life path number, and I do observe strength as number 8 in the tarot versus justice, just FYI. But I very much needed to draw on my inner strength, having just gone through the holidays, the first Christmas without my dad, going into a new year, the first year that he would not live in, actually brought feelings of great guilt. I felt like I was leaving him behind, and it sounds weird. It did not feel right. Going into 2023, knowing he had never breathed in it, I knew that this was just an ongoing message that I needed then, especially since he had passed away in the spring of 2022, meaning that spring of 2023 was the 1-year anniversary. So looking at this as the start of the year, those first weeks, I was in the lead up to that big 1-year anniversary that had a bunch of mini anniversaries prior to. And so it was definitely that first quarter of a year, a time to really like ramp up that sense of fortitude. And by the way, I only have 8 cards here rather than doing one for all 12 months. That's a bit much for me, and I feel like it's almost like too specific. I don't like looking at it bound by the calendar month. For this, it was just generally to get the feel of the year loosely around the 8 Sabbats, but I can't emphasize loosely enough because am I incorrect in saying this? But is Samhain like the usual beginning of the wheel of the year, whereas I'm starting basically I guess this would be the Yule card, but it is observing the traditional calendar as I'm looking at it. This is kicking off 2023. So that would be in between Yule and Imbolc. So it's just to have the general energies of that time, not trying to make specific predictions of what's to come ahead, just having an idea. And as I had noticed last year when I was first laying these out, I had a lot of court cards, which definitely made me feel like, okay, these could be people in my life, but I had a stronger sense that in figuring out what I have to offer, that they were going to be representing the characteristics I would need to be embodying. That was sort of how I approached it and how I'm going to reflect on it now. So by the Imbolc-ish time, kicking off, beginning of February, but going into March until the next card, roughly. This is very much how it felt because of the above said anniversaries that I was kind of bracing myself for. Getting into that period, the memories of all that just were swarming me. And it felt like that very much. The swords, of the mind, but there's very much a lot of feeling going on there too. But no question, because of the memories, the thoughts that were plaguing me at the time. Sorry, knocking into my camera. Plaguing me at the time about that time that had happened a year before, and just also the anxieties going into that 1-year anniversary and just kind of, feeling afraid of what that was going to feel like. So it was kind of reassuring to see that getting into that time, at the spring equinox and going through April, definitely the toughest time of 2021 or 2022, that in 2023, the Queen of Wands was my card. And I feel like it was a way I was trying to channel that strength and channel it into finding my creativity again, just getting that spark again. And I do feel I was finding it at this time. I was getting into studies with some friends from this community, and folks I actually had not known that well personally up to that time, but through the process got to know much better. And it was beautiful in the exchange that we were having as far as our studies went. There was a lot of personal, real life experience that was being shared in the mix of that. A lot of reciprocated compassion going around. And it was just a really powerful experience for me at that time. And having something like that really helped charge me up and make me feel more Queen of Wands. It was getting my creativity and just vitality up a bit more, because it was just so wonderful to have this empathetic group of people who were supporting me more than I think they even realize. Even just in simply asking if I was doing okay. I mean, that goes leaps and bounds, and they were showing up for me more than people that I've known my entire life. Which was just, it just meant the world to me. And so I feel like around this time, even though it was such a difficult time, still very much still plagued by those memories and just trying to process a year later all those layers of it just kind of crashing down on me again in this way, trying to process that. It was just very helpful for me to feel like more engaged and a bit more outward, less isolated, and more putting myself out there with people and summoning this much aspired to Queen of Wands energy as I was working to get out of my head and these cycling feelings and just try to like find my fire and grab that wand and move forward from there. So then getting into Beltane, so here we've got, you know, as I look at it, just that whole period of May going into June to the solstice, the Emperor. So there is a signifier card I've chosen for my dad based on how I usually choose all signifiers. He's typically King of Cups based on his zodiac. I have found, though, through readings, even prior to his passing, that the Emperor and the King of Pentacles were also showing up in ways that told me it was him in the reading. The Emperor being the ultimate card representing him, you know, that paternal card. And, King of Pentacles kind of shows up more in, like, the physicality of him, that, like, living provider that he was. And so he'll always live on then as the King of Cups because the love will always be there. But anyway, he just embodied everything a dad should for me. And so it's very difficult to see the Emperor and not think of him. So in a way, I thought this could be reflecting him because of all the aforementioned as I'm really processing. But I also saw it as me and what I needed to embody. Having gotten through that tough first year, going into a second year that in some ways was even tougher. I needed to go about it in that different way. Again, not in that like isolated kind of hiding, half living way. I just saw this as like, I got to get my shit together. I've got to get that strength. I've got to find that agency in my life again, and in a more masculine, outward way. Once I find that, you know, feminine spark of creativity within, this is where I need to start like getting ducks in a row as to how what is reemerging in me is going to be applied through the course of the year, if not my life. So, yeah, I'm kind of forgetting specifically what I was doing at that time, but I just know that emotionally I had felt I had turned a corner thanks to this energy. And not that I wasn't going to ebb and flow with that and sink right back into some real lows, but it definitely did feel like a time of just kind of getting organized and kind of plotting and looking forward again, you know, and getting a sense of like, okay, you know, what is my purpose? What do I have to offer? What have I been neglecting that I can get back to? And is there any of that I had been prioritizing that should be left behind? You know, are there certain things I kind of need to like call out and new roles to assume? Just trying to like figure all that out. But it was a definite call of like, yeah, getting that calling back my power and agency when I had fairly willingly forfeited it for quite a while. I just wanted to curl up and be sad. But getting into the solstice here, the summer solstice with this was a wonderful time. Just the coloring of it is lovely for like the brightness and all the light bulbs, because I had family visiting me in town, and particularly during this time, my brother's family had come over for the first time. I've lived in this country for 15 years, and this is the first time they came over. But, I understood because they had little kids, and it's expensive for a family to do it. But now that the kids are grown, it worked out. And it was really fun. It was re-engaging me with London and the environment around here. Again, getting outward instead of just being this little like curled up homebody in my healing cocoon. It got me out and about and exploring again. And it was fun being, in a way, I saw like my brother's family as the Page of Swords, like my students, because this was their first time here. And even though it had been a while since I've had to play tour guide around here, I mean, it's like riding a bike. And I have had to tour many, many, many people around the city, and it all came back to me, and it was so fun. So I kind of felt like teacher to the student on all these different areas of the city itself, and also outside of that. But then there are also new things that I was experiencing with them and learning about, and it's always fun. Depending on who's visiting, like it affects the lens through which we experience London together, because I'll tend to cater what we do to their interests, and how people travel is so different. So the experience is going to be different every time. And so the way they came into it, very like bright-eyed and eager to learn and explore. I learned so much from them. Like it gave me like this new outlook on the world and everything. And so it was just a very like light, bright, youthful and kind of innocent feeling time going into that summer. And it was really fun, very special. So then to follow that, what's after Litha? Is it Lammas? Hold on one sec. Okay, yeah. I just needed to verify for myself that, yeah, that's right. So this is August going into September time. Again, loosely speaking. Knight of Swords. Well, how interesting. Following on that page, whatever spark of ideas might have been encouraged during that time, this was a time of running forward with that. And I did end up visiting home for a lot of this time period. I went back there late August and stayed all through September into the beginning of October. And I was worried actually that visiting home was going to stunt the creative progress that I was making, kind of like ramping up and wanting to like sink myself into a new project, something that I could get really excited about. And that tends to get waylaid when I'm out of town, and especially if I'm visiting family and I am trying to make my offering to them as daughter, sister, aunt, so forth. But when I think about it, this was actually the time that I did grab onto an idea to run with. I do associate this card very specifically with getting the idea to do my Fool for Tarot deck based on Spike from Buffy and his character arc. And I'm going to be sharing more on that before too long. I gave a preview towards the end of last year on that, but I conceived that idea in this time period and started jotting down my ideas, even making some sketches of how I thought the deck could actually look, and getting excited to create that as well as a companion book to go with it. And it was just something I could easily do without being too distracted and too isolated from the family that I was visiting. And so I just got very excited that like I was working on a creative task during that time, because otherwise it's tough for me to do something like writing where I really want my head to be in that story world, and I kind of need to hole up with my laptop or a pen and paper to properly immerse into that story world, to like visualize it and hear it and taste it and smell it and touch it and so forth. So to stay engaged with the people that I flew across an ocean for, this was like a simple enough way for me to tap into my creativity, give myself an outlet, and it really charged me up like this Queen of Wands. Like, I had been looking all year for something to get properly excited about, and merging tarot with Buffy and getting into some visual and written arts, like I was jazzed. I was so jazzed to go into then the Samhain time where I actually like manifested this thing. And so this project became a labor of love at that time. As I was getting my focus and creativity going and creating my deck at this time, I really felt like tapped into something I hadn't been for quite some time. I don't know how much of an offering this is for other people. I am sharing it at this channel, but I guess even though it was very self-indulgent, very much for myself, the point of it was to just jumpstart myself to hopefully beget more creativity and get me excited about more projects that I really can offer out there. And it has. I'm starting this year already working on my manuscript that I had kind of got back into a few months ago, and then it went to the wayside again as I got into editing and just overall lost the inspiration for it. But anyways, I just was feeling more like myself than I had in a long time. And I felt like I was doing my dad prouder by getting back in alignment with who I am and what I can do, getting back into my heart center, really, with just tapping into who I am fundamentally. My signifier is the Queen of Cups, so I'm definitely of the water. And as much as I saw this as my dad, I also see it as myself, and just sort of the mastery, not mastery. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to master my emotions, but I think it's all in the effort. And I think this was the progress that I had made through this year, trying to get a hold of that, you know, through the grief, and just getting back in step with who I am, and just trying to like be out and living again. I think it brought me in alignment in with myself, and in doing so, I felt more in alignment with my dad. So, okay, now getting into Samhain, which I look at this last card as like from that point through the end of the year. Sure, this applies to that Yule tide, end of December as well. But finding something that I could be excited about, that I could really love. I really felt like I was doing something from the heart. Very much remembering my dad, getting into Samhain, not just because of that traditionally being that time, but also because his birthday closely follows my All Souls observances, which he's now included in. So that those first days of November were very much a time steeped in him and my love and remembrance of him. And then going forward from that, really manifesting all this inner work, and ideas that I've been working on through the year. by this year end, I had this physical project in hand. I've got 2 different copies now of my tarot deck because I wanted to see how it was in 2 different types of card stock. And so to like physically have that in hand, even though I'm still working on the companion guidebook, like it just felt like such an achievement so far. And it just got me excited for the possibilities going forward now. It's got me now revved up, as I said before, for my work in progress manuscript, a novel manuscript that I've been working on again and off again, because I've taken a long break from that. I've written a few books before, and it's time to get another one out there. And it's an idea that I've had for so long, and I don't know. I think this was just the right timing to get excited about that again. And so then again, that is something I'm ultimately going to be able to offer people. But I'm also considering other more tangible ways of doing that, not just about my creative projects, but after being so inward and withdrawn and working on my own healing, I'm really feeling tugged towards putting myself out there for others. And so I'm looking into other roles I might step into where I could more actively, tangibly be there for others in need. So it's a brainstorm that continues to happen, but I've got some ideas. And I think the physicality of the pentacles here also has me in mind of, I mean, it's so cliche to have like a New Year's resolution of, I'm going to exercise more. We all do that, right? It's like you're coming out of the holidays feeling gross after eating and drinking so much. At least I do. I mean, that's always what happens. But I mean, really and truly, by the end of last year, I think it wasn't just a lack of, creativity and productivity in that intangible sense of my inner world. I really was neglecting my physical health. I just became incredibly passive about that. And I think my body is just announcing to me in certain ways that I need to step it up and just get physically strong as well, and kind of get back to where I used to be with that. And so this page is so perfect for this like beginning of stepping out into this new year with all these new prospects, whether it is professional prospects or even silly creative projects that are still tangible, like my spike deck, even if that's something I'm not going to be making money on. But then also just physically getting healthier and stronger, and all of this to follow what I feel has been a strengthening mentally and emotionally. And I think it's so important to keep all of those in some sort of balance as they affect each other. And I think that the strengthening of one just begets another, and the cycle can continue like that. So I just see it as a more proactive step forward, getting these things really kicking again. In 2024, I'm ready to live again. And truly offer something up, however that manifests, whatever form it takes. So now that I've rambled on that, let's get cards picked for this year and get an idea of how this might go. Starting with my theme of the year. Always interesting trying to shuffle around the deck. I tend to do it 3 different ways, attempting my usual riffle and overhand shuffles, but then also ultimately resorting to this, which is fun. I think I would hate to always shuffle this way, but when I do it, it makes me feel like a kid again, which I like. The sword. So this one pretty much came up. Slightly tilted that way, but for the most part, up and down. What I will do is read from the guidebook for this one. Off the bat, it's just making me think of the swords that were in my 2023 spread, starting with that Nine of Swords, all those thoughts and fears plaguing me, but then how that got channeled into something more productive with the Page and the Knight of Swords. So I don't know if it's a continuation of that, just kind of finding that clarity and seizing on thoughts and ideas, but that's a very like tarot way of reading it. So for the archetype, let's see. Kim Kranz says, the knife, the blade, the weapon. To use the sword is to decide. The blade separates one reality from another. The choice is made and all else falls away. If you find the sword in your grasp, you can no longer hesitate. Oh boy, no pressure. This weapon requires a clear and decisive mind and a willingness to act. An onlooker may think the sword bearer is hasty and violent, but the most compassionate and responsible gesture is one that is honest, swift, and accurate. Our first encounter with the sword is at birth, when the cord we share with the mother is cut. Ooh, never thought of that. This moment defines our separation from her and begins our journey of becoming ourself. We must make these cuts again and again if we are to grow. Decisions shape our life, and the sword is an infamous shaper of destiny. Ooh, cool. I feel like that follows very well on what I was saying with like the offering last year. Like I feel like that was still very much an incubation year for me in 2023, but ramping up to this point now in 2024 where I just need to make some decisions and just get that clarity and focus to take action. No more passivity. So when light, which I do see it as it's upright, cutting through to what is essential. Contemplate the Buddhist philosophy of the first and second arrow. Swing the sword once with precision and commitment. More than that will be painful for everyone involved. Interesting. I'm going to have to look more into that philosophy. Boundary making, prioritizing, and clarifying are all gestures made possible by the sword. The sword is a metaphor for the pen and the brush, the artist's fierce and graceful tools. Ooh, wonderful, because that is definitely a way I wish to wield my sword this year through my creative undertakings. So awesome. All right. Well, let's choose our tarot cards then. I'm just doing upright. I just want to lay it out. Don't really want to form too many speculations at this point. I feel like the decks are like splitting for me very crisply in the spirit of the sword, which is nice. Four of Pentacles. Okay. I'm looking at them and I can't help but speculate, but I'm trying to swallow my thoughts because I don't want to get any wordier here for you than I already have. Oh crap. Hopefully next year I'll be back with a video to elaborate more on this. Oh boy, this one comes up for me so much. So much. Oh, I'll put her up right. Oh, actually, I'll put these this way so you can see. Queen of Swords. Seems fitting, huh? So, mid-year perhaps is when some of these decisions are made more clearly. Up, there's my guy. Ooh, again, the sword. How about that? Well, well, well. Here, the king's face to show. This is interesting. At a glance, it's not as dominated by the court cards as it was last year, but there is this triumvirate right here in this later part of the year, but definitely taking note of the sword imagery there. There's also a lot of cups, though. Half of these are cups, in fact, and I see the cups in this imagery as well. So it could be this merging of heart and mind in that sense of justice, however that applies here. Yeah, and the Pentacles, though, seems like pooling my resources and getting some stability materially, physically, tangibly, in some way before facing some of these decisions, some of these choices that I have. So there you have it then, folks. This is my 2024 year ahead. The year of the sword for me, apparently. So thank you for joining me today. And if you stuck out all of that, I would love to hear from you. If you do this practice, maybe not necessarily in this form, but are year ahead readings your thing? How effective do you find them to be? And is this year boding well for you if you do use them? This is my third try. I've obviously found it worthwhile enough to keep going with this. I generally don't do predictive readings with tarot, though, because I do see how any of this can change, but I guess that's why I avoid looking at it as something too specific and more so just general energies that are present. And I feel like for the last 2 years, that is definitely something that has stayed intact through the year versus these other variables that might fluctuate through it. So for me, I just find it easier to go a little more concisely than the 12-month, sticking to wheel of the year roughly. But I would love to hear what your approach is if it differs from that. And I hope that your 2024 is off to a good start, a positive one. We all come into New Year's with all sorts of resolutions. So here's to setting goals that are achievable and sustainable so that we don't feel like we're just setting ourselves up to fail, things that we can really follow through on and will be for our best benefit. I've got to say, I've used the word excited a lot in this video, and it's the first word to come to mind when I think of this coming year. I am excited of what 2024 will bring. So on that note, I wish you well, and we'll see you next time. Bye.